Ahir, Guardian of Malor, Chapter 16, Lang Khan's Victory. Beautiful portraits and statues lined the stairway, but they didn't draw Milton or Trixie's attention as they charged up the stairs. Milton frowned at Trixie's heavy breathing. She didn't have the luxury of flying like he did, and if she got worn out here, her shield would be almost useless. How much could he lift while flying? Perhaps she could ride on his back and he could carry both of them up. How much further is it to Lang Khan's throne? Syllabo replied, Not much further, only another couple flights of stairs. Milton shook his head and turned to Trixie. Do you think you can make it that far, or do you want me to try and give you a lift? Trixie smiled and pushed on.
I'll be fine. Don't worry about me.
Milton turned his attention back to Syllabo. I expected to see more of Lang Khan's Arius Avum guarding the palace, but we haven't seen anyone since we got inside. Do you think they're all waiting for us in his throne room? Syllabo shook his head. Lang Khan is sure to have some of his followers around him, but I think a majority of his forces were focused outside. It would appear that Ahir did a good job of thinning his forces. Milton snorted. Don't remind me. Torjad hurried down the stairs to the Arius Avum he had left down below. He saw the 6 he had left to open portals still concentrating, and the others were just lounging around the room. Torjad growled, Haven't you gotten those portals open yet? There's fighting going on outside the tower. One of the Arius Avum, working on opening a portal, cracked his eye open and glared at Torjad.
Opening a portal takes time. Even Master Lang Khan couldn't open one any faster.
Torjad shook his head.
We need reinforcements now! If we send more humans at them, we might be able to turn more Arius Avum and cause the others to lose heart.
The Arius Avum sighed.
You're welcome to try and open a portal faster if you like, Torjad.
Torjad snarled.
You know I avoid using magic. Master Lang Khan wants to keep me as I am so that I will provide him with objective counsel. Not just praise and adoration like you sycophants give him. According to you lot, his every idea is pure brilliance and can't possibly fail.
Syllabo's voice echoed up the stairway. We finally made it to the top. I hope that you all are ready. Torjad's head turned toward the stairway, and panic filled his face when he heard Milton's reply. Good. Hopefully Lang Khan hasn't broken the seal of the sword yet. A flying golden lion came up the stairs, clutching the Poega Jorzi in his hands. Torjad shrieked, Milton! I thought I left you injured! He turned and ran back toward the staircase. Milton growled, Torjad, I was hoping I would find you here. You're going to pay for what you did to my eye. Milton flew past the Arius Avum in the room. Trixie held her hand out and cried,
Milton, we need to stick together. There'll be time to deal with Torjad later.
Trixie's cries fell upon deaf ears as Milton sped up to the top of the tower after Torjad. Milton's voice echoed up the stairwell after Torjad. What's the matter, Torjad? Don't you want to perch on my shoulder now? It'll be just like old times. Torjad's shriek echoed back down in Milton, and Torjad ran as fast as he could up the stairs. Torjad reached the top of the tower, looked down at the fighting going on beneath him. He turned to face Milton as he stalked ever closer, and he put a smile onto his face.
Milton, you have to forgive me. This has all been to gain Lang Khan's trust. Together, we can defeat him once and for all.
Milton frowned and shook his head. Save it. I'm not going to believe anything you say anymore. Torjad's eyes frantically searched for a way out of this. Why wasn't Milton believing him? Maybe if he offered to replace his eye. A cunning smile replaced the panic on his face.
You are exactly what Master Lang Khan needs to ensure his rule here. Come with me, and I'm sure we can find a place power for you once King Darduo is dead. We'll even let you finish off Ahir if you want. He's no longer of any use to us.
Milton snarled, I'm not going to let you use me or anyone else ever again. He pulled back his bowstring and fired an arrow into Torjad, and then leapt over the edge of the tower and fired the second shot down into the middle of the fight raging beneath them. Torjad was pulled screaming over the edge of the tower and crashed into the ground, cracking the pavement and drawing the attention of the fighters down below. A satisfied smile filled Milton's face for a few moments until it was replaced with panic. He left Trixie and the others alone in a room filled with Arius Avum. He had to get back down there and help them out. He turned and rushed for the stairs. Trixie raised up her shield and deflected a fireball back at the Arius Avum that had hurled it at them and knocked him back over. The humans cowered behind Trixie, and one of them whispered,
Why didn't we leave with the others? There's no way we'll make it out of this alive.
Trixie gave what she hoped was a reassuring smile.
Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you. We'll get you out of this safely.
She just wasn't sure how yet. Not that she was going to let them know that. 6 other Arius Avum they had stumbled across looked like they were still concentrating on something, most likely a spell of some sort. She wasn't looking forward to finding out what that spell would do, but she was glad that they were distracted for the moment. Syllabo and the other Arius Avum were struggling to keep the attention of Lancon's followers, but they were outnumbered. The 3 of them, even with their artifacts, weren't much of a match for the 8 Arius Avum that didn't hesitate to use magic on them. Several of the Arius Avum were lying on the ground, bound in invisible shackles because of one of the artifacts, but the effect didn't last long enough. After a minute or two of struggling, they would break free of their bonds and go right back into their attack. Syllabo was causing chaos in their ranks with his rod that caused whoever he touched with it to become confused. Thanks to that, the magic attacks used by their enemies hit allies as often as not. But the 3rd Arius Avum's frying pan that would turn blazing hot at will wasn't proving to be very useful. Trixie wasn't sure how such an artifact hadn't found its ways to Darduo's kitchens, but then again she wasn't sure how any of these artifacts went unused. A portal sprang to life in front of one of the Arius Avum, and Trixie got an idea. She turned to the 2 humans standing behind her and said,
Go through that portal quickly. It should take you back to our world and change you back to normal.
The humans looked hesitantly at the portal and all the chaos going on in the room and said,
How are we supposed to make it to that? Surely one of the Arius Avum will attack us before we can make it there.
Trixie sighed.
I'll keep you safe. Now come on. You need to get back and warn the police that there might be an invasion. Go to Detective Miguel and tell him Trixie sent you. He'll believe you.
The other human replied,
We will make sure to give him your message. Thank you for everything you have done for us.
The 3 of them hurried toward the portal, and Trixie deflected multiple magical blows away from the humans. The humans dove into the portal, and once she was sure they were away from danger, Trixie thrust her shield into the portal and closed it. The Arius Avum standing next to the portal glared at Trixie.
Do you know how long that took for me to open?
The Arius Avum pulled its hand back to slap at Trixie, but a light arrow crashed into its back, and it was pulled across the room and slammed into the wall with a grunt. Trixie smiled and turned to see Milton floating above the stairs.
Milton, you came back.
Milton nodded his head and fired another arrow into one of the Arius Avum working on getting another portal open. Sorry I left, but we don't have to worry about Torjot anymore. You go on ahead and try and find Ahir. Syllabo and I will join you once we've dealt with these Arius Avum. Milton fired his second arrow out one of the arrows, and a second later, the Arius Avum went flying out of the tower, screaming curses at Milton. Trixie ran across the room and pushed open the door and rushed into Lang Khan's throne room, revealing Lang Khan sitting upon his throne with the Gladio Prodigat levitating above his hands and 3 of his followers sitting around him. Lang Khan's eyes opened and he snarled,
What do you want? I thought I told Torjot I didn't want to be disturbed.
Trixie swallowed the lump forming in her throat and hesitantly said,
I'm here to stop you, Lang Khan, and to save Ahir.
Lang Khan's eyes narrowed and he more closely examined Trixie.
I don't recognize you, but that shield. Wait, are you Trixie?
Lang Khan laughed before continuing.
You came here to stop me with just your shield?
Trixie's body started shaking in fear and her voice quivered as she replied,
We will defeat you, and when this is all done, Ahir and I will return to our world together.
Lang Khan shook his head.
I don't have time to deal with you right now. I'm in the middle of something very important. I have no quarrel with you. Just take it here and go.
Trixie paused for a moment. He was right. What was she going to do against him with just her shield? Even Milton would have a hard time beating Lang Khan with just his bow.
You'll just let us go?
Lang Khan smiled.
I'll even promise not to destroy your world. All I'm asking you to do is to walk away from someone else's fight. A fight that you can't win. Ahir is in the cage in the corner. Just take him and go, and I promise to forget your world even exists.
Trixie looked at the corner that Lang Khan had indicated and gasped when she saw the cage containing a black mist and Barbo's bruised and battered form. Trixie rushed over to the cage, and Lang Khan nodded his head and turned his focus back to the sword that hovered over his hands. Barbo sat up and groaned,
Miss Emiliason, you can't be considering abandoning us now.
The black mist that floated in the cage that Trixie assumed must be Ahir said, He's right, Trixie. We have to stay and fight. They don't stand a chance on their own. Tears ran down Trixie's cheek. She sniffed and said,
Ahir, what have they done to you? Of course we have to fight, but I can't do it on my own.
Trixie bashed her shield against the cage, shattering it to pieces. Ahir moved over to Trixie, and 2 arms formed out of the mist and wrapped around her. Did you come alone? Trixie shook her head and wiped tears off of her cheek.
No, Milton and some Arius Avum came with us, but most of them are fighting outside of the tower, and Milton is outside the room with Syllabo. What are we going to do here?
Ahir looked at Lang Khan and his followers. The only thing we can do is to try and get the sword away from him before he can break the seal on it. I think we have to rush him and hope he's too distracted to notice us until it's too late. Trixie shifted her stance and prepared herself to run.
On the count of 3, then?
Ahir nodded his head and counted 1, 2, 3! Ahir and Trixie rushed across the room as fast as they could. Ahir reached out to grab the sword, and Lang Khan lifted his hand at the same time. Ahir and Trixie were hurtled across the room and slammed into the wall. Lang Khan never looked up from the sword, but said,
Please, I'm in the middle of something very important. I don't have time to deal with you right now.
Ahir struggled against the magic that held him to the wall, but after a short time he slumped. What's the point of even trying? I'm no hero without the sword. I'm just a street performer. Trixie continued to struggle against the magical bonds that held her.
You are a hero, Ahir. It's not the sword that made you a hero. It's who you are. That's why the artist Avum chose you in the first place.
Ahir snorted. Some hero I turned out to be. I fell for Lang Khan's tricks and let him get the one thing that would allow him to fulfill his plans. I was too weak.
You allow compassion to rule over reason out of concern for your friend. That is what makes you strong. You're not weak.
The doors of the throne room burst open and Milton flew inside. I still think you're weak and rely on me to save you far too often. He fired an arrow into the sword and a second one into the ceiling. The sword leapt out of Lang Khan's hands and became pinned to the ceiling. Lang Khan growled,
I'm getting tired of all these interruptions.
Lang Khan looked at his followers and said,
Continue the spell while I deal with these intruders.
Lang Khan formed a fireball in his hand and launched it at Milton. The bonds that held Trixie and Ahir to the wall disappeared when he did, and they dropped down to their feet. Milton flew to the side, and the fireball crashed into the doors, knocking them off their hinges and into the next room. The door slammed into Syllabo, knocking him to the ground. Syllabo grunted when the door landed on top of him, and he struggled to get out from under it. Ahir shouted with a hope-filled voice, Milton! Good to see you are all right! What's our plan? Milton flew out of the way of another fireball and shot an arrow into a bit of rubble from the cage, and a second one behind Lang Khan. Get the sword away from Lang Khan before he can break the seal on it. I'll come up with something else if we make it that far. A bit of cage that Milton had shot with his arrow flew across the room and slammed into Lang Khan. Lang Khan was knocked back a step and he growled,
I am not amused by these games of yours.
He grabbed the bit of cage and threw it to the side, and once it left his hands, it flew to the spot where the other arrow was. Lang Khan formed another fireball in his hand, but before he could launch it at Milton, another bit of cage crashed into him. Milton released his pull on the sword, allowing it to fall down into Ahir's waiting hands. Lang Khan was hurling curses at Milton under a barrage of broken bits of cage, so he didn't notice Ahir rushing up behind him. King Darduo strode into the room and held a golden scepter out toward Ahir.
Not my son!
Ahir's body went rigid. He felt the king's will fight him inside of his mind for control of his body. Lang Khan turned and saw Ahir standing behind him with the Gladio Prodigat raised to strike, and panic filled his face. Once he saw that Ahir wasn't moving, he started to laugh and turned to face his father.
This is perfect. Not only did you ruin the only chance you had of winning, you also allowed me to achieve my victory sooner than I had planned.
A third mind joined the fight for control of Ahir, and this mind shoved the others aside as if they were mere flies. Lang Khan seized control of Ahir's body, and he stalked across the room. Lang Khan said through Ahir's mouth, There was no reason for you to come here, father. I was going to be coming for you soon enough. You just needed a little more patience. Darduo's mind snapped back into his own body, and he held his hands up.
Son, this doesn't have to end in more death. We can talk this through together. If it's the throne you want, I will be happy to step aside and allow you to sit upon it. It was to be yours one day anyway.
Lang Khan snarled, I'm not so weak that I need to be given what is mine by right. The Gladio Prodigat darted out and slashed through Darduo's neck. Sadness filled the king's face before his head rolled off of his shoulders. Before it reached the ground, it began breaking down into a black dust, along with the rest of his body. The dust flew out the window as if carried on an unseen breeze, and the golden scepter fell to the ground with a ping that echoed through the room. Lang Khan turned and walked across the room and handed the sword to his actual body, before giving Ahir control once more. A smile filled Lang Khan's face.
My thanks to you, Ahir. Without your help, I wouldn't have been able to achieve my victory. Thanks to you, I am now the king of the Artis Avum by right.
Tears flowed down Trixie's face as she charged at Lang Khan.
That was your own father. How could you just kill him like that after he saved your life?
Lane Khan flicked his wrist, and Trixie was thrown across the room by an unseen force. She crashed heavily into the wall and fell into a crumpled heap on the floor. Her shield dropped from limp fingers and clattered onto the stone floor. "No, Trixie!" Ahir shouted as he hurried to her side. He listened closely and heard that Trixie was still breathing. Lane Khan shook his head.
I hope now you see how foolish your attempts to stop me are. Take your friend and go. I will not give you another chance.
Ahir picked up Trixie's shield, turned, and faced Lane Khan. "I am Ahir, the guardian of Malor, and I will defeat you." Lane Khan shook his head.
I don't understand. This isn't your world. These aren't your people. Why do you care what happens to them?
Another piece of case slammed into the back of Lane Khan's head, and he turned and growled at Milton. Milton raised his hand up to push his glasses further up his nose, and he smirked at him. "He's a hero. That's what heroes do." Lane Khan formed a fireball in his hands and hurled it at Milton. Milton dodged the fireball and launched another set of arrows, sending another chunk of the cage flying at Lane Khan. Ahir ran toward Milton as Lane Khan fired a barrage of fireballs at him. Ahir was able to reach Milton in time to send one of the fireballs hurtling back at him using the shield. The fireball struck Lane Khan squarely in the chest and knocked him to the ground. He rose to his feet and glared at Ahir with a gaze that dripped venom, and he snarled at him. Calmness spread over him, and he stood up and dusted himself off.
You must understand by now that this is pointless. You can't harm me. I don't have to kill you. I just have to wait until the seal is broken on my sword. My victory is inevitable, and there is nothing you can do about it.
He sat down upon his throne.
Stick around if you wish. Once I have gathered my followers around me, I'll deal with you.
Ahir hung his head. He's right. He turned to look at Milton, a small smile appearing on his face. We have to stop them from breaking the seal. Milton smiled too and pulled back the string on his bow, taking aim. I'm way ahead of you. He released his first arrow, and it flew into the back of one of Lane Khan's followers. He smiled and fired a second arrow into the wall. The Iris Avum shrieked as it was hurled across the room and crashed into the wall. Ahir grinned like a boy that has just gone away with sneaking a cookie from under his mother's nose. They won't be able to concentrate on the spell if they were being thrown around the room. Milton, you're brilliant! Send one of them my way. I want to see what happens if they bounce off of my shield. Lane Khan jumped out of his throne.
Don't let the humans distract you. The seal on the sword must be broken.
And a lightning bolt flew from his fingers at Milton. Ahir dashed up to Milton's side and pushed the shield into Milton. The shield knocked Milton back and out of the way of the lightning bolt. The lightning bolt crashed into the wall, and dust and bits of rock rained down onto Ahir. Milton groaned and grabbed onto his ribs. Thanks for the save, but next time, just push with your hands. The Gladio Prodigus started to glow golden in Lane Khan's hands. It glowed brighter and brighter until Ahir and Milton had to shield their eyes from the light. The glow disappeared, and one of Lane Khan's followers looked up and smiled.
The seal has been broken, Master.
Lane Khan shouted triumphantly at the ceiling.
The hour of my victory has arrived.
He turned and glared at Ahir and began slowly stalking toward him.
I must congratulate you. You've managed to delay this moment far longer than I thought any human capable of. I hope that this is a suitable reward for such a feat.
He swung the sword down at Ahir. Ahir raised his shield, and the sword bounced harmlessly off of it. The force of the swing reflected back on itself, almost sent the sword flying, but Lane Khan hung on to it and was sent staggering back several steps to avoid being knocked over. Lane Khan hissed.
Another of Lost Crit's annoying artifacts. I doubt you will give me much trouble once I rid you of it.
Lane Khan flicked his wrist once more and sent the shield flying from Ahir's grasp and pinned it to the wall. Milton watched in horror as a victorious smile filled Lane Khan's face, and he pulled his arm back to swing the sword down at Ahir. Milton pulled the string back on his bow and fired an arrow at the sword. Lane Khan lifted his hand, and the arrow disappeared before it reached the sword. He spared Milton a look.
Did you really think that I wouldn't anticipate you trying to shoot the sword out of my hands? Patience, Milton. I'll take care of you after I finish with Ahir.
Milton looked around the room in desperation and saw the Escudo Spiegel pinned to the wall. He had taken some crazy shots in his time with the Poega Jorzi, but this one was almost impossible, and he was only going to get one shot at it. He fired an arrow onto the reflective surface of the shield, and immediately fired a second arrow into the ground next to him. Lane Khan swung the sword down at Ahir, and the arrow crashed into the sword in mid-swing, and it was instantly pulled across the room to land at Milton's feet. Lane Khan scrambled after the sword, but Milton bent over and picked it up before Lane Khan could get there, and drove the point into Lane Khan's chest as he dove. Lane Khan's eyes opened wide in shock, and he gasped out,
You don't understand. I could have done great things for my people, greater than any king before me.
Lang Khan's body broke down into dust and blew out of one of the rooms